Hello and welcome to another episode of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, in this exciting lead up to the playoff final and hopefully a successful result at Wembley this Saturday. With me I have Logan.
Hello.
And I've also got Mitch.
Hey everyone.
Boys, how are we feeling? What's the mood leading up to Saturday, and how do we see our chances on Saturday? Start with Logan.
It just brings back the childhood memories of Christmas, waking up to find out what you've got. I think that's almost what every night's sleep feels like at the moment, as we edge closer to the game. But yeah, the nerves are certainly high. I can't say that I've been thinking about much else this week.
Yeah, it's been tough getting through work with the game on Saturday to look forward to, but just sort of counting down the days, I suspect. What are your thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, 100%. All week, it's all I've talked about to everyone. I don't know. I don't even know what to say at the moment. I'm just so scared.
Well, we'll take it back then to just a bit over a week ago now, when we played Derby over the two legs, and we didn't really know what to expect going into that one either. We were a bit nervous about how that was going to play out, and the first leg was about as simple as you could hope for, with a 3-0 win at their place. We'll run through that game first, and then we'll chat about the home leg afterwards. But I'll start with you, Mitch, because I know you were out at Cheers with me. What was your take on the game? Who did you see as a man of the match, and what were your highlights, lowlights, etc.?
I think Odebajo, again, as in the first leg, he was just unreal. Oh, second leg as well, but first leg, and he did his job in defence as well, but nearly all our goal-scoring opportunities came through him, and I think he got the assist as well for the Robertson goal. So he was my man of the match over both legs. First leg was obviously unreal. Couldn't really believe it. It was good to give it to the Derby fans there. The second leg, well, yeah, let's just...
We'll chat about that one in a second, I guess. Logan, what were your thoughts on that first leg? I mean, I know in the podcast leading up to it, we were sort of hopeful more than anything that we could get a straightforward result at Derby to take back to the KC, but what was it like actually getting it?
Exactly. We called for that. We said we needed to put in a strong performance in the first leg, and that would be the difference in the two ties. I think we all anticipated that we would get that result at the KC if we held on at Pride Park, but obviously it turned out being completely different. And well, I guess we're very thankful for it, for the overall result. But I don't think any of us could have expected what we witnessed at Derby.
So we'll go through the goals then, because they were each sort of spectacular in their own way. Obviously, the Hernandez goal to open the scoring was spectacular purely from how far out it was hit, because for most of the season you would be forgiven for thinking Hernandez couldn't shoot if it was any further out than a couple of metres. But it was a fantastic strike, and really the work started in defence with Jakupovic's clearance. And we should probably touch on his inclusion, because obviously we didn't foresee the unfortunate injury to McGregor that looks like keeping him out of the final. But Jakupovic, especially in that first leg, didn't have a whole lot to do, but what he did was quite good, and that clearance obviously leading in the build-up to Hernandez's goal.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Leicester in the way that Schmeichel gets forward. He just gets it forward quickly, and they catch him on the counter, and that's somewhat what that was. The first touch, I think Jake got the assist in the end, but it's kind of weird from Abel to see him create his own opportunities, as we were saying on the night, because we would never expect that last year, and to hit it from distance and creep it in the corner was unreal, and I think it shows how far he's come for us.
And how awesome was it with the amber hair as well? It was great to see him and Odebajo joining in on that.
Yeah, well, it worked for him, didn't it?
Yeah. Logan, what were your thoughts on that opening goal and sort of the pressure valve it released? Because obviously we went on and started to play with a bit of confidence afterwards.
Well, obviously we've always said that when Hull City lead, it takes a very good team to beat them, and we always look comfortable when we're in front. The Dawson error was actually the thing that kind of led to the appearance, which was quite surprising, that we turned something that looked rather shaky and dangerous into something so great. And as Mitch said, it really does show the different elements that Abel has to his game, that he just kind of pops up and does these things that you don't expect. Because as you said, we've got so used to him being a poacher from, I think most of his goals seem to come from the 6-yard box. Or they certainly did earlier on in the season. So, to see him score from range, you can see when he scores, we always look good.
And then obviously the second was technically an own goal, but obviously completely created by Odebajo, who was all over Derby, especially in that first half. I don't think he scored a goal for the club yet, but how much do you reckon that meant to him to put us 2-0 up and almost 1 foot into Wembley?
I think for Odebajo, he's always about confidence, and when you see him taking on players like he was and getting into those pockets, it really is a joy to watch. I think it's definitely massive for his confidence. Being probably, or arguably, the most underrated player that we had, or one of, at the start. He certainly cemented his spot, and you can't ever see Steve Bruce leaving him out of the 11, which has to be a big confidence boost from him, coming from Brentford and joining arguably a much bigger club.
Yeah, exactly what Logan said with the confidence. I think when he started to get down the sideline and beat defenders so well, I think that got his confidence up. So I thought, may as well have a crack, and it ended up working for him. So yeah, just the confidence thing, and hopefully he brings that into the final.
And then obviously the third goal was from your boy, Andy. We kind of waxed lyrical about him last episode and his ability to get forward, and he certainly showed that in the final minute of the game, the 98th minute, to be the man on the end of that brilliant passing move. And in the end, that was the goal that took us to Wembley. So I saw on the night how much it meant to you, but maybe sort of relay again just how exciting that goal was for you when it went in.
Well, he'd not really done a lot leading up to that. Like, he was kind of missing during the game. Like, I guess he did his job, but nothing spectacular. But yeah, when he got forward, obviously turned around, pointed to the name on the back of the jersey. It was ecstatic, and just to see the Derby fans so upset, it made me really happy.
What were your feelings when that goal went in, Logan?
To be honest, I was just glad that I wasn't watching the game with Mitch. I would have had to get the fire hose on him. Obviously, I think that was, you could see the reaction of the players and even Steve Bruce. It was kind of at that moment that we knew that taking a 3-goal lead back to the KC, that it would take a gigantic effort to turn us over. And well, I mean, they almost did it, but I think that was obviously the goal, signed, sealed, and delivered. And for it to come from Mitch's man, I'm more than thrilled for him.
And we won't dwell. Sorry. We won't dwell too much on the home leg, because obviously that was a 2-0 loss. But it was interesting that we, in some ways, predicted what was going to happen in the home leg in terms of Bruce not making any changes, and then the almost inevitable result being that some of the players looked a bit lethargic, especially Diame. And I think Huddleston actually picked up an injury soon into the second half as well, which was a bit problematic. But what were your takes on the tactics going into that game and how Bruce approached that game, and the fact that they basically got 2 goals back into it within half an hour and really looked like they could go on and actually win the tie? How did you see it, Mitch?
Well, yeah, as you said, we kind of thought he wouldn't make any changes. And I think with the lads like Diame and Huddleston who do get that fatigue, he probably should have looked into that a little bit, but I guess it got the job done in the end. But I've never been more nervous for that last hour. That was the most terrifying experience. But again, we got the job done. It wasn't pretty, but we got it done in the end, so I'm happy. And
2-2 for your boy. One in the wrong end.
Yeah, that was pretty upsetting. Well, we kind of don't make it easy on ourselves. Like we never have, and so I think he was just trying to replicate history, bring history about the club. He did us a favour, I think.
How did you see the second leg, Logan?
Uh, it was a confusing one for me. I probably I wouldn't have played Diami, or I certainly wouldn't have started Diami, and probably would have thrown Myler into the mix just because with the lead that we had, I feel like his kind of grafting attitude is well totally the opposite to what Diami offers. So I was a little bit confused with the way Steve Bruce played. Like you said, I guess we knew that he wasn't going to change the squad too much, but if we were then going to go out and have a kind of, I guess, a defensive mindset, which it certainly appeared, it was a bit puzzling to see Diami on the field. But look, it's like Mitch said, there was one of the longest hours of your life, and we saw it through. But yeah, at no stage did you ever feel confident. And fair play to Derby, they came to the KC with a job to do, and they were certainly motivated.
I suppose in some ways the fact they had so much possession was what tired them out in the end, because there was that comment that towards the end of the match they were tiring, which is amazing when you think that they were the side that had made changes going into the game. So in that sense, I suppose their efforts in the first half kind of undid them in the end. Diami's role kind of puzzled me because he seemed to be almost a loose man in not in defence so much as a deep lying midfield position. It was strange because it meant whenever we broke, Hernandez was up front on his own, and the ball very quickly came back and put pressure on our defence again, because it was very hard for him to hold the ball up. I mean, he did quite a good job with what he had, but I think I agree. I think Myler in the side from the start would have been a very different looking side as it was when he came on. It'll be interesting to see actually if he's played his way into contention for the final, but we'll chat about our potential starting 11 in a little bit. But we will look ahead to the final now, and we'll start with sort of having a look back at our fixtures against Sheffield Wednesday during the season. And it's almost as if Sky were a bit prophetic with this final, because both of our games were on Sky, so we've had the luxury of having watched both games. And we'll start with that 1-1 draw at Wednesday. What were your thoughts on that game? It was obviously quite early in the season, and I think it was Hernandez was just coming into his form and was still in that patch of play where he was just scoring from a couple of yards out. How did you guys see that game? Was that almost 2 points dropped away at Sheffield Wednesday at that point of the season? I'll start with Logan.
From memory, at the time, I remember thinking that's exactly what it was. I remember they pinched that goal from Elmo playing Forestieri on side, I believe. And that was extremely frustrating to watch because it felt like we had the run of play and we made them look pedestrian at times and just really didn't take our chances. I even felt that when we got the equaliser that we were going to go on and win the match. And I didn't think that 1-1 was reflective of the score. And I guess at that stage of the season, nobody still really rated Sheffield Wednesday. And they probably maybe flattered themselves a little bit by sneaking into the playoffs, and they seem to be playing with their tails up. But certainly at the time, I was certainly saw it as 2 points dropped.
How did you see it, Mitch?
Yeah, looking back on it, it's probably a decent point away, but at the time I definitely thought 2 points dropped because, as Logan said, no one really knew what Sheffield Wednesday had to offer. Just watching the highlights, though, I know it doesn't show the whole game, but I thought we looked pretty shaky in defence. They got a few openings. Davies was a bit nervous by the looks of it, but I remember that Elmo playing him on slide. I was so angry at that. And Hernandez, what was his goal like again?
It was quite a scrappy one, but it was great build-up from Livermore, where he I think it was a 1-2 with Maloney that sort of opened up their defence, and then the ball kind of pinballed a bit around in their defence, in their penalty area, before Hernandez sort of latched onto it.
Oh, yep, and there was a defender on the line.
Yep.
Well, I guess he had to be there. He's had a little bit of work to do. He had a touch before he had the shot, so he put it in the net, I guess, but again, that just built to his confidence and built to his goal against Derby, I guess.
I think your comment about Davies and even Dawson's quite a good one, because I think the key with that game was we didn't really know how to handle Forestieri, because he seemed almost their only dangerous player at points. I know Bannon had a shot that really he should have put on target at the very least, but it looked like we kind of struggled to deal with Forestieri, and I know Dawson was quite lucky not to give away a penalty against him early on in the match. So it kind of keeps coming back to that key point that if we can sort of deal with him better, as we did in the return game, which we can talk about a bit as well, then it goes a long way to securing victory. In that return game at the KC, it was a 0-0, and it almost felt like they came to play in the first half, which was great to see, but they got to half-time and thought, well, we've actually got a point to play for now, so let's kind of set up shop and protect that point, which they did quite well. The first half was relatively open from memory, and I think it was that first half where Forestieri had that shot that hit the crossbar. It might have been the second half. And then obviously the incorrect sending off. But what was your assessments of the game? I think we might have even talked about this on one of the first podcasts. It might have been that recent. But I'll start with Logan.
Yeah, I remember at the time that I watched that game with you at Cheers, Alex, and we walked away both wooing the missed opportunities, and had the same kind of feeling that if we had taken our chances, we probably should have walked away with that game. And like you said, they did a good job at defending, particularly in that second half, but there was only one side playing football, and that was certainly us. So I think reflecting on both the results, heading into Wembley, it really does fill us with a lot of hope, knowing that in both games, although we have only taken a point, we've certainly been the better side. And I think the pressure still is on Sheffield Wednesday. They'll definitely be underdogs going into Saturday.
How did you see that 0-0 at the KC, Mitch?
I remember Klukas had a couple of opportunities. I think he tried to dink one over Westwood, and another one hit the post. But every time we drop points at home, I'm disappointed. I think home games we can take 3 from all of them. So obviously to drop 2 to Sheffield wasn't super impressive, and considering all the chances we had, but they set up shop well and I guess earned their point.
And from memory, that was in our frustrating stretch where we also had that 0-0 with Brighton, and I think it was also when we lost 1-0 to Birmingham. So it was around that stretch where we'd had our very impressive January and then just started to drop off a bit. So it was a very frustrating one. The interesting point as well, which we haven't touched on, is also the lineup in that first game against Wednesday. I think is almost identical to how we've lined up against Derby, and presumably will line up at Wembley. Except for Maloney starting at left mid instead of Snodgrass if Bruce sticks with that formation. And I think that's got to bode well as well, because as you say, Logan, we've played quite well against them and matched up quite well against them, so the players would get a lot of confidence out of that, you would think.
Yeah, certainly. Snodgrass is definitely a different type of player to Maloney as well, in the sense that you rarely see Maloney beating players down the wing. Whereas Snodgrass likes to occasionally take them on and probably has better delivery, or certainly has better delivery. So, with that change, I certainly think we look even slightly stronger. And nothing against Maloney. I think Maloney offers quite a lot, but I think Snodgrass is a big game player certainly, and just gives us that extra dimension.
And then if we look at Sheffield Wednesday's build-up, they've obviously gotten over Brighton, which was in itself quite impressive. Their lineup, if it's the same as it was against Brighton, has a few storylines in it. We've got Westwood potentially starting a goal as a player who was signed by Bruce at Sunderland, so he has priors with our manager. Then the defence presumably of Hunt, Lees, who's an ex-Leeds player, Louvens and Poodle. And then Wallace, Lee, Lopez and Bannon in midfield, with Wallace being an ex-Burnley player as well, so he's quite used to beating the Tigers, I suspect. And then obviously Forestieri and Hooper up front. Do you guys know much about any of those players? Do you take anything from that about, obviously beyond just Forestieri, as players to watch out for?
I think Wallace is certainly one to keep an eye on. But yeah, like you mentioned, Forestieri is the key. He scares me. Hooper's definitely a threat, but I think Forestieri is definitely the one that I've been losing sleep over this week.
He feels like that sort of big game player, doesn't he? He feels like, on that stage at Wembley, he's going to do something crazy and score a goal that will send their fans wild.
Oh, don't say that.
Mitch, what are your thoughts on it?
I know Kieran Westwood is probably one of the best keepers in the championship and has been for a few years. And yeah, obviously Forestieri is the man, but I think Ross Wallace scored in both legs against Brighton, so he might be one to watch out for as well. And Hooper only has 2 less goals than Forestieri this season, so he's obviously got it in him as well.
And Hooper's obviously the man with that crazy record where I think he's the only player to have scored in the Champions League, Europa League, Scottish Premier League, the Scottish Cup, the FA Cup, the League Cup, etc., etc. So I think there was an article in the Hull Daily Mail recently where they said, he's only got one more occasion to add to his collection, I suspect, which would be the playoff final, but hopefully that's not the case. And then obviously a bit about their manager, Carvajal, who I think their owners brought in the summer because he was a recognised name, which is always an interesting reason to bring in a manager. There are plenty of managers who are recognised names who I don't think would actually do that good a job these days. But he's come out in the press and said that he's very keen to go on the attack and attack, sort of get at us. Do you guys think that sort of plays into our hands a bit? Is that sort of how Derby came undone in that first leg?
Yeah, certainly. I think any team that is open against us with the, as City fans, we're very accustomed to knowing that Steve Bruce sets up his teams very well defensively. And I think the blueprint for beating Derby at Derby would certainly suit us at Wembley if we were to play that style and catch them on the break. But any team that seems to have a shot at us, it certainly plays into our hands. And I could see that if Sheffield Wednesday did do that, I could definitely see us nicking a goal in the first half an hour.
Well, we've seen it before all season. When teams have come at us, that's when we've managed to kind of give it to them and put a few goals on them. But I'm not sure that he's actually going to come at us so much. I think it's going to be pretty low scoring, as it was in the previous 2 meetings. As Logan said, our defence has always been good under Bruce, but yeah, I don't think they will come at us entirely. I think they would have seen that when teams do come at us, we put goals on them. So I think he'll be smarter than that, and I think he's just talking it up, to be honest.
The other interesting aspect, of course, is that we've got priors at Wembley in the last couple of years. It's almost a second home for us with how often we travel there these days. Logan and I had a look back at previous Wembley fixtures a few podcasts ago, but we'll run through them again now because it was only a couple of days ago that it was Dino Day, with 8 years since that game against Bristol City, which seems so recent, and yet 8 years seems quite a long time. It's almost 8 years since I became a City supporter, so it seems like time's flown quite quickly. But what were your memories of that 1-0 victory over over Bristol City, I should say? Because obviously you guys were both watching that game, I believe.
Yeah, certainly. My memory of the win over Bristol City was actually probably I more remember Fraser Campbell, if anything, which saddens me very, very greatly. Thanks. But yeah, I used to rate him highly, and he just was such a dynamic player. Obviously, the Dino goal will always be the highlight, but just looking at Fraser Campbell's setup and the assist that he gave was just incredible. And look. I think it's very difficult to look back on that moment and not see that as one of the most romantic moments in the history of the club, regardless of whether you're a City fan or not.
I think I saw somewhere the comment that very few goals sum up what a player means to a club as much as that goal from Windass at Wembley to send his hometown club into the Premier League for the first time, and he's crying on the final whistle just shows how much it meant to him and to a lot of the players who were reduced to tears. And the squad that we've got now is made up of so much more expensive signings and theoretically higher quality players, but they've got a lot to live up to in terms of the spirit and the heart with which that side played at Wembley back in 2008. But how did you remember that game, Mitch?
Well, I was only 11 at the time, I think, so my memory might be a little bit hazy. But Fraser, as Logan said as well, Fraser Campbell was my man back then. Like he was just so dynamic, and he offered so much going forward. And his assist, obviously, for the Dino goal was something in itself. But Yeah, well, I remember crying at the final whistle when I saw Windass on the ground crying as well. So that was a good feeling, and probably the best feeling I've had in black and amber ever, I guess.
And then obviously we've had our other victory at Wembley was against another side from Sheffield in, I think it's the equal highest scoring FA Cup semi-final of all time, which is a decent record to have. But the 5-3 against Sheffield United, we obviously went into that game 2-1 down at half-time. Funnily enough, the one goal coming from Sagbo, who is sort of a forgotten man when it comes to that FA Cup year, but he got that goal to get us into the replay against Brighton, and then he kind of got the goal to spark us back into life against Sheffield United in that first half. And there was a certain Harry Maguire playing for the losing side in that game, so I'm sure he'd be very eager to play some part this weekend to rid himself of any of those bad memories. But how did you guys? What are your guys' memories of that 5-3 result? I'll start with Mitch.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what we were doing in the first half. I think the way we set up obviously killed us. And he made a few changes at half-time, and that obviously sparked us back into life. But I was kind of in disbelief at half-time. I couldn't believe we were going to lose to Sheffield United, but we come good in the end. And I think Myla's goal was kind of like, that's when I finally was at ease, I guess.
There were so many good moments in that game as well. Just thinking through all of the goals, because obviously Fryatt scored with pretty much his first touch after half time, and then Quinn getting the header against his former club, and then, as you say, Myla scoring that sealer.
What was the other one? Was it Huddleston?
So it was and Huddleston skipping past Harry Maguire of all players.
Yeah, he took a really good touch just to take it away from Harry. I remember he went left, and then he took one touch to his right before hitting it, and that was I remember that pretty clearly because I just thought it was unreal, and he showed that fire that you were talking about, like the passion of that 08 team, I guess, or the original promotion. Yeah,
because I think that was the goal to put us in front, so that was a pretty memorable one as well. How did you remember it, Logan?
Yeah, I remember it being a monumental event, but the Huddleston goal is the thing that stands out the most for me. I don't think I've ever seen Huddleston show such urgency on the ball to actually to win that. And I was watching in disbelief when I saw that, and I think it was at that moment when I saw Huddleston score that I knew that we were coming back, because you just don't see Huddleston do that kind of stuff ever.
I think it was just one of those amazing games where we started to pile on the pressure and the goals were coming, and you just sort of felt like, all along you felt like it was going to be our day, but when they were obviously 1-0 and then 2-1 up, you kind of feel like maybe this isn't going to happen, and it's typical City. So when Fryatt scored, and then Huddleston, and then Quinn, and then that sort of avalanche just came. And again, that Myla goal, we had a habit that season and last season and even this season with that Robertson goal, those goals on the counter late in games, they come so regularly for us in games when we can hit people on the counter. I remember last season Jelic getting a couple of goals that way as well late in games against Palace and a few other sides, and Ndoye as well, I think. So again, I mean, if Carvajal decides to play Wednesday as quite an attacking side and really comes at us, then it certainly plays into our hands. The final game at Wembley obviously wasn't as great a result, but obviously we won't touch on this one too much. But the only aspect of this one I wanted to touch on in terms of, we've talked about the goals to death in previous podcasts, but the players who played in that game and are now going to be lining up at Wembley again for us, which, you got your Curtis Davies, Tom Huddleston, Jake Livermore, probably Elmo, potentially Myla as well. Does that sort of help us or hinder us in the sense that the players won't be overawed by the occasion, or do you reckon that makes them a bit more, not complacent, but maybe a bit too relaxed?
I think I saw an interview with Curtis Davies today, and I think he summed it up the best I've heard it. When he said, they were playing against Arsenal, who are used to playing at Wembley more regularly than us, and they play at the Emirates every week, and they play in Champions League games, and Hull City were able to go out and get the better start on them. And I think that probably shows testament to, yes, playing at Wembley may provide those few players a little bit more confidence, but I think it, in many ways, probably could be more of a hindrance and allow us to be a little bit more complacent. than what Sheffield Wednesday will, because they certainly haven't had too many visits to Wembley in recent times, or certainly not of this magnitude.
Because it's a tough one. I mean, Bruce would have said to the players, and he did say in the media before the second leg against Derby, we can't be complacent, but you can say that as much as you want. At the end of the day, it's just words unless you put it into action. And obviously we did go out against Derby, and we were maybe not complacent, but we were very tentative. So as much as Davies might say, we've got to be mindful of all of that, as you say, it might still kind of creep into their attitudes. How do you see it, Mitch?
Yeah, that's a good point Logan just made, but I think the big game occasion will help him out, will help them out in the end, just with nerves, I guess. And just thinking about the complacency now, I'm kind of glad we didn't beat Sheffield during the season, because I think that might have added to it. The fact that they were both draws and both so low scoring might get rid of that possible complacency.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I mean, if it was Charlton, for instance, that we were playing in the final and we'd beaten them 6-0 during the season, I'm sure we'd be very much more relaxed going into that game. So yeah, that's a good point as well. Then all that's left to talk about really is our starting 11 and predictions for the game. As we touched on a bit earlier, McGregor's obviously not seemingly going to pull up for the final, so it'll be Jakupovic in goal again. I did want to sort of bring up probably his most infamous moment in a Hull City shirt did come against Sheffield Wednesday, where I think he conceded a rather soft goal and then claimed a head injury, which saw Mark Oxley come onto the field. But he's proven himself in games against Arsenal and Liverpool over the last couple of seasons. So do we have confidence in him going between the sticks at Wembley?
Yep, he's a changed man. I was actually at that game at KC when
I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
When the yak went down, he'd been hit by a sniper in the crowd, and I remember sitting there thinking it was one of the weakest moments of football I've ever seen. But he's certainly changed. I think that performance against Arsenal that it'll probably always be remembered for is to certainly change his mindset. And I've got to be honest, I kind of never really rated the yak as a backup keeper, but after that Arsenal performance, I think that he really has put pressure on McGregor for arguably the first choice spot. If you also remember the cup tie against Leicester, we went into the penalty shootout, I believe. Like, he's had a couple of pretty solid performances across the board, and this season's certainly been his best in the City shirt.
I agree exactly with what Logan said. I'm still going to be a little bit more nervous than I would be with McGregor, just because when a ball comes in, I don't know, I just still don't have my full confidence in him, but it's changed a lot this season. Like, he's been unreal when he's been needed. So I've got more confidence in him than I normally would have, but not fully yet. Hopefully he can give me 100% after the weekend.
I think in a lot of ways he personifies City, because I think if Hooper or Forestieri has a decent shot in the first 10 minutes and the Yak pulls off a great save, his confidence will just be up for the whole game. But if he concedes a goal in the first 10 and 15 minutes, then it could be a very shaky afternoon for him. So I think he's very much a confidence player. So if we get through the first 10-15 minutes without conceding, and if he can make a save or two, even better, I think he should be set for the afternoon, I suspect. Do we see any changes being made from the Derby games? Do we see Myler maybe forcing his way in? I've even seen suggested perhaps we go to 3 at the back to accommodate a second striker, but would that be too radical a change for the final? Remembering, of course, that Steve Bruce brought in Quinn kind of out of the blue to start against Arsenal, and that really worked in our favour.
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Alex, when you said that when we spoke about do we play the same squad in the second leg at Derby. I think that when that team is rested, or that City 11 that we played in the first leg at Derby, I believe that is our best team that we can field. And I think having the break in between the last tie against Derby and the final, I think it'll work wonders, and I think that we'll remain unchanged.
I don't think he'll change it. The only possible change that I could see is Myler coming in for Huddleston, but I still don't think he'll do that unless Huddleston's injury is bad enough to keep him out. But we haven't heard anything about that, so I assume he'll go at the same 11.
Yeah, I suspect. I think he's been saying in the press conferences that he has no injury issues, so I suspect Huddleston should be right to go. And at the end of the day, it's great to have that luxury and depth of having a player like Myler who can come off the bench, and if we do need to either go more defensive or need to change the tempo of the game, that he can be a player to do that for us. The other interesting player, of course, then is someone like a Shoni Aluko, who I think after the FA Cup final, Bruce was quite positive about his impact on the game when he came on. He obviously had that pretty bad miss quite late in the game against Arsenal, but he's obviously shown himself up to be a big game player when he's needed. I also remember he had a few decent Europa League performances for us as well. If we were looking to play a second striker, or if we did need a bit of pace late on to sort of run at them, he'd certainly be a good option off the bench as well. So I guess all that remains, guys, is to get score predictions from you guys.
Oh boy.
I'll start with you, Mitch.
Well, I wrote my preview for the Supporters Trust like just before we went on this, so I'm going to stick with what I said in there and say 2-1 to us in 90.
And hopefully everyone gives that a read. Logan, what are your thoughts?
It's very hard to say. Like I said, Forestieri has been keeping me awake at night, but I'm gonna back us in. I think we're gonna repeat the Derby performance and we're gonna blow them out of the water and 3-0 City victory.
Yeah, I want to go with you on that because I really think it depends. If Wednesday do come out and true to Carvajal's word, they attack us, I think we will win 2 or 3-0. If they come out and it's a more cagey performance, I do think it could be something like a 1-1 or a 0-0 after 90. But I don't know if my heart could take going all the way to a penalty shootout. So I'm hoping that we can get it done in the 90, and I'm hoping that we can get it done 2 or 3-0. But it is City. We do like to make it tough on ourselves, so who knows. And then just finally, I did want to make mention of the fact that we have been sort of scouring Australia for locations for people to watch the games, wherever you may be based. Melbourne, we do have the Imperial Hotel who have confirmed that they will be open. They're on Burke Street, and they're actually going to be staying open all night. So if we do win and you do want to party on, they'll have the Champions League final as well for you to watch that lesser competition after we get through to the Premier League. Brisbane, I think the Big and Whistle is open, and they'll be showing the game. They're up on Riverside. Perth, Darwin, and Adelaide, it's all going to be the casinos. I think they're the only venues that are open all through the night, and I think it's the same in Auckland as well, and probably Hobart. And then, of course, in Sydney, where else would you be but cheers? We had a huge turnout for the semi-final. I think there was at least 25 City supporters there. We had the flag up. We had a huge amount of support. We drowned out the Derby supporters, which was great. So it's a good occasion. So hopefully see everyone out and about around Australia. Send us your pictures, send us your messages from wherever you are, and we'll try and get those out on Twitter and up on Facebook. But thank you guys for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll see you both Saturday night. And for everyone listening in, thank you for listening in. And hopefully when we come back on there for the season review, it'll be a very positive one. So until next time, come on City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City A.F.C. Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City A.F.C. Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.